Here I have some of my leftover yarn, and I'm going to make a chunky scarf with all these bits and pieces. I'm going to put together 4, 5 or 6 strands of yarn at the same time, and you can use a very big hook. This is size 10, but it could even be bigger. So there's different types of yarn here. All of it is wool, but some of them are natural wool and some have been treated in some way. And then there are some mixes like with alpaca. Some are really tiny scraps, so I put those here. All of these are leftovers of variegated sock yarns. I knit lots of basic quick socks for the family, and I like to use variegated yarn, so you only have one yarn and it's still colorful. I don't have a plan. I'm going to make it as I go, and most likely I will also use full balls of yarn that I have in various places in my house. Throughout the video I'm giving many tips for this type of scrap yarn crochet. I don't want the scarf to be too wide. I'll only want it to be around 20 centimeters or around 8 inches. And normally I would always make a gauge swatch, and I do have this little one here that I can use, but here I'm going to do a bit of guesswork. So I'll do a chain that is not quite there. If that's 20 is there, I'll do it around 16 or 17 because it is going to widen with these big stitches, even if I do a loose chain. I'll start with these here 5. One of them is not a center pull, so I'll put it into a box, and then I take a strand of each. If you have yarns in your stash that you're not really sure about the color, this kind of a scrap yarn project is great, because if you have 5, 6, 7 yarns at the same time, one of them is not going to be showing too much. For instance, this here, it's just too colorless for me, so I'm not too happy about this one, but it will do fine in this here project because it gets mixed with so many other ones. For an even scarf, it's important that the weight of all the yarn strands remains the same or almost the same. So if one yarn is thicker, you probably need less yarns, and with very thin ones you need 1 or 2 more. When I'm using very chunky yarn, I'm not doing a full slip knot. I just start the slip knot, but I'm not tightening it. I leave it like this and I count this as the first stitch. I just think that's better because that way you don't get a big hard knot there. And then chain fairly loosely. And it's really not going to take many stitches. Let's see how far I am with this already. That's about close to 16. I'll do one more. There's 14 stitches here, and for me that will be enough with the yarns that I'm using. And then you need to do 2 more for turning and starting. And I will simply make a double crochet in every stitch, starting now with the 3rd. Just an ordinary double crochet using the American term, treble in British. So just go to the end with these, and then we'll look at it. Almost at the end now, and I'll crochet that one. And then there's this half done slip knot, so I will consider that as an ordinary stitch. And I make 1 more there. And now as we start going back and forth, I'm going to use the method for straight edges in double crochets that I have on a number of videos. And part of that is that you chain 2 when you turn, not 3, and then turn. And then starting the double crochets here, only taking the front loop. The reason for this is that it gets a bit lighter when you don't make it so tight that you go through the entire stitch. So you only take the front loop of it always. And double crochets just on like this here. But I mean that it's slightly lighter, that it sort of comes out. It's not quite as tight then when you only take one side of the stitch. So go to the end, but stop before the last stitch, so we'll look at the edge. Now I have 2 stitches left. The first one just normal. And now there's one left, and for that you start a double crochet, go through both loops, just so that it's a bit sturdier. And start the double crochet, but leave it in here, and then start another one in the same stitch. And do it to this stage as well. So now we have 3 loops on the hook, so there are 2 half done double crochets in the one stitch. And then pull the yarn through all of them. So that will ensure that the edge will be straight. And then chain 2. You always chain 2. So you will finish every row like this here, and you always chain 2 for turning. And now just continue as we did. So you take the front loop only. Sometimes a bit hard with all these strands or with yarn. I'm soon now going to, I'll make a few more stitches and then I'll start changing first one of these. And throughout the whole project I will only change 1 yarn at a time. That way the color changes will be very gradual. When you're using different kinds of yarns for one project, it is important to know which yarn is the one that needs most care, because when you wash the finished item, you need to do it according to the yarn that can take least washing. So for instance here, this one is 100% untreated wool, so it felts. So this cannot be washed in the washing machine. So if I use this, the whole thing cannot be washed in the washing machine. If this, even though it's 100% wool, if it was superwash treated, then I could. These here are all so-called sock wools, so they have about 80% wool, and then the rest is polyester or nylon or tencel or something that gives it strength. So these here ones are machine washable wools. And if you are not sure what you have used, then don't wash it in the machine. Now I'm going to change this one into this one that has some glitter. So first of all, see where that one is. It's this here. And you need to leave a long tail now, because we need to do these 2 double for quite a while, so that you can then just cut them. So I'll cut it in, I'm leaving it, these are big stitches even more, like that there, quite a bit. Cutting it there, and then finding the start of this one here. What I'll do, I'll simply overlap these. You may have seen my video about twisting these, but when there's so many yarns, I don't see a need for that. So the first one is still there for quite a while, and it's going that way, and I'm putting this just so that it starts here. And I leave it here for now, and simply start. So now for a while I have 6 strands, but because this is so thick, it will not matter. So I continue crocheting just normally, and after a while that their tail, they're still all the way here. So this will probably be 3 or even into the 4th double crochet that I have both of them. Okay, the tail is in here now, so I just continue crocheting normal. I didn't take all sides here, so I just continue crocheting normally. And because this will be a scarf that will very rarely need washed, you will be able to just cut these after you have gone past them. Unless it bothers you, then you can of course weave them into. So now you continue. Here I am at the end, and here we have the chain and the double crochet, and they have 1 stitch at the top, so it's important to treat that as 1 stitch, and it's into that we again make first 1 and then another double crochet so that we haven't finished them, and then pull through all of them. So we can see how straight the edge is. And then chain 2 and turn and start in that very first stitch. So these here, the 2 chains and the double crochet, count as 1 stitch. And now might be a good time to measure it, the width of it, to make sure it's going to be right. Here mine is 21 or so, so that is okay. I had counted about 21. But if at this stage, if you for instance had very loose or very tight chains, this may not be correct. This shows that you should really always make a gauge swatch, but like I cut corners now. But if in this case, say I would be somewhere here at 24, 25, then I would simply restart. Sometimes it's worth taking the risk. Most of the time not. Not if it's something complicated and a fine yarn. But this would be quick to make again. So this is how this goes. You just continue until the scarf is long enough, changing the colors whenever, however often you want to, or however small balls of leftover yarn you have. So you can really play with colors here too. I'll work on, and off and on I'll show what it looks like. People say that the best length for a scarf is the same as the height of the person it's for. So I'm going to make the scarf as long as I am tall. This is how much I have got done now. So it's growing and the colors are sort of gradually changing. With a project like this, most of the time it doesn't actually go into the crocheting because the stitches are so big that the actual crocheting goes really fast. What takes the time is sorting out all the different yarns, changing them all the time when one comes to an end or you want to change one, or if they get tangled. When you are choosing what yarn to put where in your scarf, take the softest ones for the middle so that it will be around your neck. And some rougher ones that look nice, they can go to the ends because it doesn't touch your skin. I love seeing balls of wool that have been in my cupboard for 5 or 10 or more years come to an end. Next day now, this is as far as I have got so far. I have 2/3 of the scarf done now. Right now I have 7 different yarns because some of them are so fine. Now the scarf is my height. Next, I cut pieces of yarn to make fringes. You can of course make them any length, but I cut them to 40 centimeters or 15 inches. And I'll pick 10 threads, yarns for each fringe. I'll select slightly different yarns for each fringe and then fold it into 2. You can of course make it thicker, have far more yarns than the 10. And fold it into 2 and then take your hook and just pull it through as if it was a big stitch and go through it like that there. And you can just make as many as you want for it and make sure you start everyone from the same side of the scarf. The yarns I left in the beginning, there's not enough of the yarn, so I'm going to add some there as well. Finished. I'm really happy with it.